Welcome everyone to the fourth installment of our Youth Partnership Spotlight Series. My name is Mark Kalk of the Stoneleigh Foundation, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And if you haven't heard of Stoneleigh before, we primarily fund fellowships for those working at the intersections of youth justice, child welfare, health, and education with the goal of improving life for young people in Philadelphia. We also support an exciting group of youth partnership organizations committed to growing the leadership and advocacy of young people in the city. Our conversation today is focused on sharing the fantastic work that our youth partners at the Young Artist Program are doing to support people. Before I introduce all of our guests for today and get to the important work that the Young Artist Program is doing, please know that we will have time today at the end for an audience Q&A. If you have questions for the Young Artist Program, you can submit them to us at any time by using the Q&A button located in your Zoom window. Please include your name and organization in your message so that we can better respond to your question when we get to it. Now, I'm excited to introduce our guests from the Young Artist Program today, including Gabby Rodriguez, lead teaching artist, they, them, Ivian Jackson, co-founder, alumni, and lead teaching artist, she, they, Kris Hill, co-founder, alumni, and lead teaching artist, they, she, Ella Wilkerson, co-founder, alumni, marketing coordinator, she, they, Kevalise Matthews Alvarado, project and administrative coordinator, they, he, she, and Tamara Suber, financial coordinator, she, they. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So we likely have a lot of people on the call who've never heard of the Young Artist Program before. So if I could ask you all to start off just by telling us a little bit about, YAP's work, its mission, the kinds of activities and projects that it does.
So we do, actually, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely, absolutely. So like I said, probably have a bunch of people on the call, never heard of the Young Artist Program before. So for anybody who's never, met your organization or the people that work in it, could you tell us what it is that you all do, as an organization?
Okay, so we actually do like a plethora of things. Obviously, we do art. Our youth ranges from 14 to 25. We focus on BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQIA youth. We basically just provide a safe, nurturing space for youth to thrive because, and I'm quoting Ivian, because surviving is the bare minimum. We want our folks to thrive.
All right, thank you for that. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means specifically, right? So is this just is this a walk-in space? Do you have projects or programs that you do with young people?
So it is a drop-in program, meaning that youth can come whenever. If they come once a month, they're a student. If they come every week, they're still a student. We don't really have super hard requirements for participating. Our programming is from Wednesday through Friday from 3:30 to 6, and each of our 3 LTAs are here on different days. And depending on the month, we may be working on a specific project. The last project was our climate fashion show collab with Prevention East Fashion. And so when we have events coming up, sometimes program time goes to making things for that. And then other times, students can just use the space however they feel. And sometimes they come in with their own projects, and sometimes they want guidance. Sometimes they just want to talk, and all of those things are fine.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about, why you're keeping it, in terms of a drop-in program. Why not have something more structured? Why keep it loose? Kind of give young people, options in terms of what they want to do when they get there. Can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of that?
I feel like we have a good balance of both,
Sure.
structure and just being free and silly-willy. And simply put, it's just the students like having both. Sometimes, like I said, we just want to chill. Sometimes they do homework, sometimes they do work, and then sometimes we have events like kind of fashion show, or a next event that we have coming up is our annual collab with People's Paper Co-op.
Okay.
So like, it's a good balance of vibing and like having structure. And we think it's important because it's good to get to know yourself and not to always have something by us planned for you. So we want them to get to know themselves, get to vibe out with themselves and really explore their character.
I was also gonna say, I don't think, we also don't want to make any student feel like they're forced to come here, like Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from like
Mhm.
3:30 to 6 or whatever. Like, we want them to have the freedom to come whatever day they feel like, whatever day they need to, especially if they need a space like this. So when it comes to just being a drop-in program, we give that option so they have that free will to come when they feel.
I think that that's definitely important since a few of us started as students in the program, and as students, we have other things, lives, roles outside of
Mhm.
the commitment that we may or may not be able to have with another program. So having it be a little bit more free means that our students don't have to worry about being dropped because they got super busy at some point. And since we also go up to 25, that means that some of our students have jobs. And it would be kind of unfair for us to say that they have to be here at this time or they can't participate. So we go with more of a drop-in model.
That's fantastic. Again, I just want to underscore like the importance of that flexibility, right? One of the things I spoke about in our last webinar we did with Creative Resilient Youth was talking about the importance of having this flexible space that's not quite home, it's not quite school. You know, some people might not even have those spaces, and if they do, they might be more restrictive than the flexibility you all provide for people who just want to come by, you know, and experience the art in the community. And so the next topic I want to get into is talking about why those things specifically. I know you all have done a lot to cultivate community through the events that you do. And you do have this particular focus on art. And so I wonder if we can start by talking a little bit more about like, why is the focus on art? You know, what is it, what's so important about that creative process that really, you know, is beneficial for the young people that come through your program?
Initially, so everyone who works here, we all have our own art practice. And since initially we started specifically with high school students, which would have been coming from the Philadelphia School District, giving them a space to just do art is kind of very different from the structure and assignments and things that exist when you're in a classroom. And then since a lot of us already had an art practice, it just kind of made sense to have that be the environment or the focus that YAP has.
Yeah, and art is also very healing and freeing and back to the like self-expression and finding yourself. You can create something and then you step back and be like, wow, like, so it definitely pushes your character forward and it heals the soul.
I also think that like art in the Philadelphia School District isn't really seen as like a prominent focus, depending on the school you go to. Like if like in my high school, it wasn't really art, it was more like sports. And sports is fine, but I think art is a good way to like express yourself, especially with some of like the social justice, like communities, like art things that we do here. It's just a good way to feel about yourself and a good way to just release those emotions out at the same time.
And I was gonna add that I went to like an art high school, but I also was a student here last year before I became like an LTA. And even though like I had like art in my school, it was really hard to find a place that was both like had a huge like LGBTQ community, but also like a QT BIPOC community within it. And there's not a lot of spaces like that in Philly that I could have found. So when I found YAP, it was just nice to kind of get out of my regular art environment that at times was very like white centric. And kind of have a space where I felt like I belonged, and also I felt like I could express myself freely as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, I have so much to say about this. I
Please.
think, yeah, there's so much to say about this, but I think like art is resistance, art is radical. Like I view my art practice as an artist as a mechanism and a tool for like enacting liberation and like creating the space I want to see. And so like as an Afrofuturist, like I think that's like art to me is in Audre Lorde's like words, like poetry is not a luxury. So like art isn't a luxury. Like art is necessary for our resistance and our like building spaces where we thrive. And then going to Gabby's point, like art history is white history. Like there's a reason why fine art spaces are highly white, highly like heteronormative, like we're not able to see ourselves in that high art. So to create a space in which we can create in community, and like art together, I think is like, it's radical because like those spaces aren't meant for us, even in spaces that are centered in art and like respect art as what it is. Like, is it cathartic? Is it a healing experience? Is it like whatever that is? It's still not a space where we necessarily feel safe and seen and reflected as like trans, queer, like BIPOC youth. So I think that's why art and like getting to the community space, I think like that community is necessary, and that's like, it saves lives, like to create spaces where people feel seen, like even just to come in a space and be like, oh, there's people that look like me, like I can understand myself by walking into a space and see it's reflective of me, like that saves lives. So it's not just about like I think that also gets to your earlier point about that flexibility allowing for more access. So I think like making sure that youth can access this community space. And like, if things in their life get too challenging and they can't come in, like, we're not gonna drop them. Like, they're still a part of that community, no matter if you come to one event or you come to like several, like YAP is still a home for you. And that home is like art making, because I see that as like part of what I was put on the earth to do is like to make radical shit, is to like make things that are highly tied to our collective liberation. Like, I think to me, that's the point of art for me. And that goes back to healing. Like it can look different depending on someone's art practice. But to me, as a queer Black artist, like that art making is tied to my resistance and like my radical politic. So that's what I have to say about this.
And I think that, I agree with everybody that they're saying that, the scope of what art looks like and what creative practice looks like is such a wide range. So that can encompass anything. We have Gay Field Day, and we're doing active activities, we're playing sports, we're playing games. Like, the definition of what these young people are defining what art means to them, they're making that, and so it's creative thinking. Creativity to me is thinking. We're thinking creatively, we're being innovative. And so that affects policy, that affects, changes to people who aren't even interested in the arts. That ability for us to think collectively and create spaces for young people to think creatively will affect others who might not even think about the arts as being effective, that create policies that really, can transform, generations to come. So it's really has a big impact.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing all of that. I mean, it's so important to say. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about the work that you all do is that you are creating this flexible, open space in a time when we're seeing that disappear, particularly in Philadelphia and across the rest of the country. We talk about, one example I can give is the new curfew down at the mall, in East Market Street, where you have to be a certain age, you have to show ID, you have to be a certain kind of person to be able to walk through there without being bothered. And there are just so many fewer spaces than there used to be. Well, I can't actually say that, but there are not enough spaces for young people to be themselves, to express themselves, and truly express themselves in the way that they want to, right? To have that complete creative control and freedom. They're so often in environments where there's someone else in charge. There's someone else making the decisions for them. There's someone else restricting and limiting, who they are able to be and what they are able to say and do. So that's one of the things that I think is just so fantastic about the Orange Programs, that you are really committing to this idea of creating a welcoming and safe space, for young people, but also people who, don't have a lot of those spaces. I might actually jump ahead here and talk a little bit more about that, right? You all focus in particular on creating a safe space for, and I'm just going to use, one of the phrases here. I know that there are several, and this is probably not the perfect one, but like, right, LGBTQ teenagers, BIPOC teenagers, basically anybody, who does not feel that they have a safe space somewhere else. I know you said a little bit about this already. I don't know if you want to say more about why you all are focusing on those groups of people, why you think it's important to focus on those groups of people in terms of the work that you do.
I feel like we are those people, and like we started as, a lot of us started as students. We started as those young teenagers who had no spaces to go, or only like one space to go, but that one space was so important to us. And it was a different kind of feeling to be in a space where we didn't have to call them Miss this or Mr. that, or like it didn't feel like yes, you were teaching me, but it didn't feel like, it felt like I had the authority and I had the freedom and the control to do whatever art practices I want. They were more so here to like guide me and help me, instead of like force a plan for me and and for us. So I feel like we think it's important because it's us and we've been through it. And that's why it's important and why we continue to do it.
And to go back to Chris's point, that is us, that has been us. And so in that, we know what the experiences are of queer and trans youth of color, and know that they don't look the same as white youth or cis het youth. The things that they need are not the same. And since our focus was on high school students specifically, and most of us went through the Philadelphia school district, we know what the needs are, and we know that the school district isn't always equipped to meet them. And so being able to cultivate a space that addresses those needs that are important was important to us. And so that is why that's the focus that we chose.
Yeah, and we also realized that because when we graduated and we became alumni, we were like, where are we gonna go? And we realized that a lot of people cut off their like youth spaces at like 18, 20, and we were like, it's still a lot of development and growth. Honestly past 25, but I feel like we felt like the most important was 14 to 25. But honestly, we do value like multi-generational spaces. So like, like as long as, simply put, as long as your vibe is right, you can come and be a part of our community.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a really good. Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, like, operating in the context of like a violent state, like Next was like murdered in their school. So like, in the context of like spaces that are supposed to protect youth, like from firsthand experience, we know that those are often the most unsafe spaces. And like queer youth don't wanna go to school because they're being bullied, and the teachers are a part of that process, and like the admin and the adults who are supposed to protect you in those spaces aren't. And like, we're also in the context of like heightened anti-trans laws that are like being passed every day. So I think like when you look at the outside world, like we need these spaces. So like going back to like what Kris and Ivy and Gabby have been talking about, like yes, we come from like firsthand experience at those intersections, but also in like putting on my scholar hat, like I would just say like intersectionality, like thinking about how our youth at the intersections of queer identity and like Black, brown, just at the experiencing racism as well as homophobia, transphobia, like those systems like are directly targeting those at the intersection. So like we're centering the most marginalized, disabled, like trans, queer youth of color, because that's not only who we are, but that's also how we undermine those systems, is not just separating and looking at one, but looking at the intersection of those systems and like where the rubber meets the road. And that's at, like these competing forces that are enacting violence on our youth every day. So I think to me, like in my own practice, but also just like scholarship, I always like to look at that and like make sure I'm holding Black feminism thought and like Black feminist thought, which is like looking at the intersections of those competing systems of oppression. So I would just say add that to the mix here.
Absolutely. Does anybody want to go ahead?
I think it's active erasure or active people are actively trying to erase, Black LGBTQ youth. I think there is and just Black youth in across the board. And so I think we have a responsibility to protect Black youth. I think, I've been thinking about this. I remember when I started art school 15 plus years ago, and I was thinking about how there weren't any spaces for me, and this is still a conversation, like generations, like my parents' generations were talking about this before they were talking about, like, this is continuing to be a conversation, so there's such a sense of urgency, you know, it's past even the sense of urgency, it's like, why, this should be a staple, this should be a priority, this should be supported, this should be, you know, whatever you need, we should be supporting things like this, spaces like this, youth who are thinking like this, youth who aren't even beginning to think like this, that just want to be near spaces that are thinking like this. I just think it's really essential to everyone's well-being, not just those groups.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just want to take a moment and create a space in case anybody else wants to add to that as well.
I was gonna say that I feel like it's not just like your LGBT or your like your BIPOC, like those two like are on top of each other, like they layer each other. Like I'm Latinx, and a lot of my issues when it comes to like my Latinx background and stuff like directly tie into a lot of my issues when it comes to like a discrimination I feel when it comes to like being queer. And even though I grew up in like art spaces and stuff like that, it was always talking to someone who was trying to understand like the QT BIPOC experience, who was white, or trying to like sympathize with me or empathize with me in ways that they couldn't. So the fact that there's like a space like YAP that is truly run by like the QT BIPOC community and has like all the staff members who are QT BIPOC who can understand people like that is like heartwarming, and also was a space that I found comfort in and now I work in. So
That's awesome. And so, you know, the one thing that really struck me, just because it was real simple and sweet, was, you know, talking about how the vibe is right. I think one thing that's like so important about everything that you're doing is that, you know, it's those little details that matter, right? We have a lot of people who want to do work with young people, but they don't realize when they're misstepping, when they're saying, you know, it's like, oh, well, of course I would say Mr. and Mrs. It's just the polite thing to do. And they don't have, right? They'll have youth in these like advisory positions, or they might ask them for advice, but they're not putting them in like decision making or leadership roles. So I don't know if you want to say more about the, like, again, the importance of that, right? Putting young people in positions to lead and to actually use their voice, and not in a way that's just, you know, tokenized and kind of heard but then dismissed, in a way where that their words are then translated into real like policy and action. And I think you all do that so well, again, by putting, you know, previous participants in, you know, teaching positions and other roles. So if you could say more about that, I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, I think that like when we started YAP as like students, with me, Kris, and Ivy started YAP as students, we didn't want a space where we had to like be school part too, because we were always in school for like 6 hours at a time, right? So it was better, it was easier to come to a place where it was like, you don't have to call me Miss, Mister, or anything, but we also want your opinion on everything, especially just growing up in life or growing up in school. We really don't get an opinion on like what the curriculum is, or what we're learning, or what we're doing today, or even really our schedule. Like we really don't get a lot of times to really make options and opinions. But coming to YAP and having this space to be like, what do y'all want to do today? Do you want to run this campaign, or do you want to be a part of this like parade? Do you want to be a part of this, you know, like Raleigh? Like, what do y'all want to do? Like, we want to hear your thoughts. It made me personally feel like I was actually getting my voice heard out there, instead of just being in the background, instead of someone else speaking for me. It was letting myself actually be heard, and it made me want to stay longer. Like I've been here, what, like 7, 8 years at this point, almost a decade. And it's just like a space where I know that if I say something, I won't be shut out and I won't be shut down. We will have a conversation, we will talk, and we would all listen to each other. And that's just a beautiful thing to have, especially when you're going in high school, going through a lot of different things on a lot of different spectrums. Just having to be heard, at least at one space in your life, is a beautiful thing to me.
yeah. Oh,
So, derailed me a little bit.
but
But that learning, that is a very important skill, in having an environment where you can learn to advocate for yourself, and an environment that's safe, that you know that you won't be yelled at for, because when we go out into the world, we have to advocate for ourselves, and you have to know how to do that. And so being given a space where not only is that appropriate, but it's encouraged, it's almost required for you to advocate for yourself. And also that young people have such unique experiences and such important things to share, and that we're doing ourselves a disservice by not listening to them, because the future is theirs, and they have a say in what it looks like, and so we need to listen to them and help them whenever they need help, give them the tools to make whatever reality they want come true.
Yeah. And we also, like, some people are like students, when they come in, they, you can tell that it's so like rare, because when they come in, they be like, oh, I'm in charge. Oh, I'm doing the, and like, sometimes they like, oh, well, for today, just you give me something. But we still give them the opportunity to like take the, what's it called? The torch, lead the their own creativity. Like yes, we'll give you like some structure, like with the events and everything, but we also want you to find you. And this is your life. And remember that it's yours, and we're just here to help you be safe in it, in a sense.
I also think how YAP is run as an organization is a testament to just them really believing in that. I think, you know, being in other spaces, other nonprofits that are well-intended aren't always on the back end operating in line with their mission. And I think that internally, there's such a thoughtful process to how YAP operates, how they navigate, how they collectively brainstorm, how their community guidelines, and just how they think and work with each other and how we work with one another. I just think it's so thoughtful, and it's rare that I've ever seen a space really operate with that in that way. And I think it's such a model for other spaces, like our government, you know what I'm saying? That, you know, it's just, it's just, the guy for president, they're doing such an amazing job. And so it's just wonderful to see that on both sides. It's not just outwardly facing and just the audience and the members that they're engaging. It's really how they operate and advocate.
No, and I wanted to like agree with that, because I work with so many like nonprofit organizations. I'm like more on the media side of things. This is one of like maybe the second like nonprofit or profit organizations that I work with that's like more art based. But a lot of them will say like they're youth led or they're like youth centered, but in the back end they're not really youth centered or youth led at all. Like they'll take in the opinions, but they won't fully understand them or let the youth lead the discussions. Like they'll take them, put it for themselves, and then interpret it their own way, instead of letting youth authentically lead these discussions or these issues that we're talking about, or these creative projects that they really want to like create or put out there. And it is really rare to like see a space that is like truly youth led, and that youth truly have a say and opinion, and that they can actually see that opinion or see like whatever they create like actually come to fruition. Because there's a lot of times where youth will say something or do something in these organizations and they won't ever see the end result. So it's like really comforting that you can see like the end result here, and you know that your word or whatever you create will have that end result.
Yeah, I think to me, I just add a couple things. It's like walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. Like when we say we are for the youth by the youth, like we literally mean that. And I think also in a lot of institutions and nonprofit spaces, like they say that, but when it comes to the money, like they're not paying the youth. They're like, they say they're focused on and centering the youth. And they want our ideas, but they never see the, like you're saying, they never see the fruits of their labor, and they're not in the position of power to really reap those fruits. So when we say we're for the youth by the youth, like we actively mean that. Like we are paying the youth, we are paying ourselves, like we are quite literally making that. And I think like providing that kind of space that fosters autonomy, I think is like life-changing. Like to have youth be able to be like, oh, I can like claim my pronouns and know that they'll be respected in this space. That's powerful. To say, oh, it depends, it's about what I want and my desires and needs. Like some youth never have even thought to think, oh, what are my needs? I don't know. To start teaching ourselves and others like what our needs are, what our desires are, and that they're valued and we should pursue those, and you have community that will help you pursue those. Like that is life-changing work. Like that is just might be what someone needs and what a youth might need to keep on going and see, oh, there is brighter things beyond the struggle that I'm facing on a daily basis. So I think that's also really important to like create the space that not only centers their autonomy, but really wants to like pour into that and help grow our own autonomy and like understand ourselves better.
Yeah, and, oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I think they're great models. I think the YAP, members and the leaders, the teachers, all of us are great models, I think, and so it's not about, it's definitely like, we're modeling what, we want to engage the youth in, and so I think that's really powerful. I think just witnessing it, being a part of YAP, newly a part of YAP, just seeing that, it's just like, wow, that's so, amazing just to see and inspiring, and so I think that is something that, modeling conflict resolution, modeling how to be an artist, modeling how to balance multiple things, running an organization that you believe in and also working in a space that you might not feel that you're heard, but how do you navigate that? So I think, helping youth navigate how they, when they leave the YAP space and modeling that, I think is something that YAP does well. So it's not just within the arts, it's such a wide range.
Yeah, and to add to that, like while Gabby was talking, I remembered like multiple conversations I would have with like people from like different organizations. They would like mostly be a little older, and they would like talk to me or us about, like, how do we help the youth? How do we do the youth? And I would be like, I got a question. Like, did y'all talk to them? Like, it's so simple, but can be so, because sometimes I feel like our brains want to make things so complicated. Talk to them, let them be them, and help guide them. You're trying to, how you gonna make a program for the youth and not talk to any youth? It just don't, so like something as simple as a conversation can help externally and internally.
Also that the youth are experts in what it is to be youth. I'm 22, so I'm not that old. I don't know what it's like to be 16 in 2024 because that's not my experience. And so if I didn't talk to a 16-year-old who's living in 2024, I wouldn't be able to connect with that experience or be able to even be knowledgeable of that experience. And so it's important to speak to the youth because they know what's going on. They know what their needs are, they know what their experiences are, and it's important to hear them. And I also don't think that we need to be speaking for the youth. I think that they have a voice and that they should feel empowered to use it. And that's part of the work that we're doing and letting them be autonomous and make decisions, learning how to use their voice. It is important because they have important things to say.
Absolutely. I want to underscore what you just said, right? Which is that, we meet a lot of people who say, oh, I was 16 once, I know what it was like. And actually, even if it was only a year or two ago, right? Even if it was only a short while ago, the world changes so quickly. The experience of being 16 years old today is very different than it was even 5 years ago, right? Pre-COVID, or even, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And so people who think they know what young people want because they were young once don't understand how quickly the world changes. So I really appreciate you bringing that up because it's so important to talk to the people who are young people right now to understand the nuances of what they're going through today, not 2 years ago, but today. The other thing I wanted to highlight is just, again, Tamara, I know we've had conversations about this in the past, how much I appreciate, your commitment to walking the walk, right? The piece of advice I've heard from you all, over and over again today is having that conversation, but then also the follow through, right? The demonstrating that you are listening and responding to what the young person is saying, because again, that kind of conversation is different from what I think we so often see, which is just having that conversation and then going off and doing, adults will go off and do their own thing and they will never close that loop, right? And come back and say, okay, you told me, we should do X, Y, and Z. And so that's what we're going to do, or we can do X and Y, but we can't do Z. And here's why, right? Actually explaining the decisions. And that's like, only halfway there, right? The full process is not just, communicating back with the young person, but also letting them be a part of the actual decision-making process, not just getting advice from them and walking away, but getting advice from them, communicating with them, listening to them, and ultimately letting them, bringing them into the decision and kind of going through the whole thing of point A to point B and not just including them in one part. That's not real inclusion, right? I don't know if anybody wants to say anything else about that, or anything else they have on their mind that they want to talk about as well. All right. Kevelise, I know that you said at one point that this work saves lives. I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about that. I know you've said some, but if you have else to say, again, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just in the context, and it's so sad, but we are living in a context where like a non-binary Indigenous youth was brutally murdered in their school. Like that is just like so heart-wrenching. And to know that Nix isn't the only one, I think is just like what motivates the work, like this space and just providing the space to one youth and knowing that community exists, like that can make one hell of a difference. And I think it unfortunately takes so long within different spaces, school system, like it sometimes takes people so long to realize that there's community out there, that they're not the only one, that they're not isolated in their experience, that there are other people that look like them. And grateful for the ways that folks are able to find that space and community through like social media and like the internet, Tumblr days. Like there are spaces where like the youth are creative in finding others, but like sometimes it's like really about like being in the flesh with other people who are like quite literally a reflection of yourself, to be like, oh, I'm not crazy, or oh, I'm not whatever the mindset might be, given the violence that youth are facing, whether it's at home, whether it's in schools, like they might not have anywhere else to go. And so like this work in creating a space where it's not only about our survival, but also thriving, like I think that that is also life-changing, like life-saving and life-changing, to be like, oh, my existence isn't just about surviving this struggle that I'm living through. It's about like knowing that I can imagine my future and like see myself as an older queer person. Like that is radical work. Like even me to see like elders and be like, oh, I can grow old and I deserve to grow old as like a Black trans person. Like that's powerful. So even if it's just like, oh, I'm struggling at 16, but there's someone who's 22 like me. I can see myself in 5 years. That is like radical work. Like that is what it takes to, sometimes that's what it takes to say, oh, let me try until tomorrow, because I know that I can do it, or I can quite literally tangibly see that in others around me. Like I think that's really powerful, because unfortunately, like given the world we operate in, that's not necessarily in the media, that's not necessarily in the movies we're watching, the media we're consuming, and a lot of the time we're seeing and consuming violence, and like violence against folks that look like us. So to create a space where it's about joy, it's about like loving on each other, it's about like creating community and art, like that, I think it might just be the difference in like shifting someone's mindset, or shifting someone and helping someone find art as a mechanism of healing. Like that might just be the thing. So I think in so many ways, the YAP is able to provide a different context for the world that we're living in, and knowing that, oh, there are still people who are creating those spaces where I am safe. I just think is really important, and like, can save a life. And I've been saved by seeing queer elders, so I know that we're doing that work for others too.
Also, I would say that was my experience. I was a 16-year-old suicidal for a lot of different reasons, but sharing one bedroom with 2 other people who were homophobic. And so I did not have a space. I never thought about myself as growing old, because I didn't think that I would be here long enough to experience that. And so when I found this program as a 16-year-old, having people to listen to me and provided me with just like joy in my life, because I didn't really have a whole lot. And so it was definitely a major part in my like healing and getting through very difficult times in my life, was having this space.
I even think for older generations looking at, YAP, and I think about myself a little older and think about how outside of this space, how motivating being in this space is for me. And so it's like giving me motivation that when I was younger, I didn't have these spaces, you know, so I had to navigate, and because of that, maybe have some trauma responses or had to like go in survival mode in a lot of ways. But now I feel like having this to inspire older generations to look and feel like they can keep going, to help them feel like when they're like exhausted or they're feeling burnt out, they're like, oh, this is inspiring, this is motivating me. So I think it's helping other generations, like Kris said, intergenerational. I think it's really, it's doing it.
Yeah. And to add to that, if like to add to it, it's very, like we said, the work is healing. So like you may come into this space and have something like heavy, and like we can talk about it, we can paint about it, we can draw about it, and like you genuinely feel like better and you feel like more empowered, because sometimes we face things internally and then when we say it out loud, it's a whole nother thing we have to face.
Yeah.
So it's good to have a space where we can talk about it, and you might even come to like epiphanies and revelations. So yeah, it's definitely healing work in a space that is essential.
Yeah, I was gonna say real quick, it's also healing for someone like me who grew up in a very religious household, because I was told all my life that being queer is wrong. So to find like spaces, especially I didn't think queer was being not wrong until I got into high school. So especially trying to find a space, and also not only trying to find a space, but to then try to deconstruct a lot of ideas in my own mind growing up, and then also try to figure out who I am and what I am. It's really essential to have spaces like this that can both, like Kris said, like heal you, but will also, like Kev said, like save you at the same time.
Yeah, that's all really powerful. I just want to give it a second while I gather my thoughts here. You know, one thing that I think you said, I just want to circle back around to is just how important it is to have this be a peer model, right? So you all talked about new participants coming in and it being a group of peers, of people who look like you, think like you, act like you, and they're able to, right, teach these things, you know, help people to see the importance of all of this stuff when they themselves might not see it at first glance. So, and I think that's often very different, again, from like, right, we talk about the majority of spaces for anybody, for young people included, are, you know, again, predominantly heteronormative, predominantly white, you know, predominantly adult led. And so again, just underscoring, you know, the value of a space like this for young people, and, you know, all kinds of young people who don't have those spaces otherwise in you know, in their homes and schools and public spaces. You know, this kind of organization might be the only space they have, and that gets back to what you all have said about, you know, how life-changing it can be to experience it. We're getting down, we have about 15 minutes left. I just want to let our audience know, you know, if you have questions, now would be a great time to submit them. You can do that through the Q&A button we have down below. Otherwise, I could talk to you all for hours, but so I'll just keep. Absolutely, and I mean it that way. You know, this is just such a fascinating conversation. I'm glad we can have it, because you know, especially myself as a, you know, a white man, somebody who's not you know, a young person or hasn't been a young person for a while, I think it's so important to hear it from you all who are doing the work and you know, creating this kind of space, and again, in a way that's very rare, in a way that we don't see most other places across the city or the state or even the country. I do have one question, then I want to get back to anything else you would like to say before we wrap up today. So question is there any program or service that you would like to provide to young people that you can't because you would need additional funding or support to make it happen? Great question, by the way.
For me, I would say to start our mentorship program back up. We were mentors briefly, and we got paid like 200 a month.
200 at first, and then it was 400.
Yeah, we would like to basically start the mentorship program back up for students, like how Gabby became an LTA, like for students that are interested to keep working with us, to have like the mentorship step, and then the step into like a lead teacher artist, and then maybe further, or to basically like because we're also thinking about sustainability, and so to get that like started back up, and people who are interested to keep passing the torch to.
So it's not like
Right.
they're
Could I ask you,
Yeah.
sorry, did you want to say anything else on that?
So it's not like they're gone, like you're in the program and then you can't do anything else after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I just want to ask, and then I have another question here. We'll say a little bit more about what that looks like, right? This mentorship model. What do you do together, to create, a space where, a young person feels comfortable kind of growing into their leadership?
Well, how it started, and it'll we'll have a conversation about it, and like obviously like like change it and add things to it. But how we did it before was basically like like just light tasks, and like come to meetings, like help straighten up the studio. We will like teach different practices, maybe run a workshop, because LTAs, we basically run the workshop all the time. Mentors run the workshop sometimes, and
they're also paid additionally for those workshops to show
Yeah.
that their skills and what they're contributing is valued, even aside from the money that they make monthly. They were paid for each.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Important to add.
I think it can be thought of as like an internship, and like a pipeline to leadership, which I
Yeah.
think like even coming from like a movement perspective and organizing, and like primarily white institutions, like it's rare to have like pipelines to leadership. We're talking about prison to school pipeline, and like, yeah, those pipelines are exclusive. And so I think to create a pipeline for leadership in this context, like speaks to our sustainability and us, like, again, walking a walk of like investing in the youth, quite literally, like saying we are going to pay you to do the work and pay you to learn how to be a good leader, and like to invest in your growth as like both a person but also career. I think is like a beautiful thing. So I would definitely second that, and like a program that I would love to start back up eventually. I also think like right now I would love to grow our operational budget so we can think about sustainability. So I know it's not program specific, but I think we already run great programs. My next thought as just like a program manager, a leader, is always thinking about the sustainability of our org. So I think in growing our general operations and like investing in ourselves now, we will create the space to have YAP exist in its entirety for the future. So I think that's definitely something that not program specific necessarily, but something that I'm really focused on and investing in.
I think I would
Absolutely. Go ahead.
as a person studying to become a therapist, I graduated in May with my bachelor's, and I will eventually have my master's. But I am super interested in mental health and healing in that way, and so I would love to see some component of YAP be providing mental health support specifically, given that we are working with organizations that are minoritized, that are targeted, that are oppressed in a lot of different ways. Being able to, that could look like referrals to somewhere else, like we could pay for a portion of something so that our students can be receiving like help if they need help aside from what we're able to give. I would love to have that be part of our operations and things here at it.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
One thing I was thinking of recently, I was talking about last week with somebody else, is so I'm a social work major at Temple University, and for our senior year we have to do our internship. And the only problem is like I couldn't do my internship here because no one here has a BSW, unfortunately. But I would like to do like a connection with Temple because I have that connection to be like, just if you want to get your internship here and you just want to like just do art and just hang out and just like practice on the work, learn how to write grants, or talk to one of our LTAs, you could get college credit that way. Plus it's only like 12 hours a week, so it's actually really quick, really easy. I would love to start it like that connection with Temple University.
Okay, all super important. Just again, because we're running up on time, I want to make sure we get to one or two more audience questions, but sometimes it's just taking all of the excellent work you're already doing and bringing it up to scale. And then when you can, adding on those really critical pieces to it, right? Because this, again, the process of making art, of creating a safe space, of providing mental health, all of that is infused into one big, service for young people in a space where they could really use it. So next question comes from another one of our audience members. I'd love to see some of the artwork. I may have missed it, but is there a way to do that? That's a great question. How can people view If you're comfortable, how can people view the artwork? Maybe not at this moment, but I know that we'll certainly, send
Yeah,
an email out to everybody who attended this event.
Right now.
Well, so that's a great question, right? That's a great question. Would you be comfortable, folks contacting you and wanting to come see the studio? I think that's something to think about.
Yes, and we also, we open our doors on, we're in the Crane Art Building, and every second Thursday, we're on spring break this month, but in April, I think it's like April 11th, we'll be open. We have, different, stations that we operate. Like last month, February, we did a love letter writing station and a clothing giveaway. So yeah, definitely come, and y'all can come outside of second Thursday as well, but if y'all like wanna fully be a part of like a craft making session and also see the art that's hanging up, second Thursday would be a good day to come, and we do it every month.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we also like, whenever we do have events, we do post about it on our Instagram, and you'll be able to see the artwork or things that are created that way, because sometimes we don't focus on like straight like artwork like on a canvas or anything like that. We might do like pumpkin painting, or we might do something fun that includes the art and includes some type of activity. So you'll definitely see that on our Instagram as well, or on our website.
Yeah.
I think we also each have our own
Yeah,
individual
we have our
art
own.
practices, and we have our own like Instagram pages and businesses and things related to our specific individual art practices. So if anyone is interested in that, we could send a list with our like handles. If that is, if anyone is interested in seeing it that way
Yeah,
as
we
well.
can definitely, like, I have a digital portfolio, I would definitely be down to share like that in terms of my own individual art practice. We also have like some zines, and so I feel like some of our zines have like different art that was created in previous years. So that would also be something cool to check out when folks are in the studio and are interested in like seeing more of the art. Our zines, asking about our zine collection would be another great way to engage.
Absolutely. So we will include links to all of that for anybody who's interested in it. We're going to record this. Well, we are recording this. We're going to put it up on our website on YouTube. YAP will get a copy as well. They can do what they want with it. And then in the email we send to everyone after the fact, we'll make sure we include all of those resources so people can learn more about all the fantastic work you're doing and the art that you're creating. Are there any other, resources you want to highlight for folks? Are there places that they should check out if they want to learn more about or support your work? How can people learn more about all of this if they're interested?
Definitely follow us on Instagram if you have one. That's our main like source of like posting and announcing. We also have a newsletter and a website. Yeah, we'll share all that with the when we give all our information to you at the end.
Yeah, definitely, like follow our newsletter, or like ask to be a part of the newsletter. Sign up's really easy. Our website has a lot of great information, including like donation links, to like financially support us and things like that, if folks are interested in engaging and supporting YAP in that perspective too. So yeah, website, Instagram, newsletter, all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so, like I said, again, this one's recorded. If you want to check out our other spotlights, they're recorded as well. We finally have got enough questions. We're not going to be able to get to them all. So I will share that with the team and, let them follow up if they like. I do have one question, though. I think this will be a great one to close us out on. Take a minute to think about it, and then we can discuss. What is your vision for what society needs to look like in order to create healthier conditions for young people? What is a society that supports youth? What does a healthy society look like? Go ahead.
I don't even need a minute.
Sure.
No. Like I said before, like I feel like a lot of things are simple. At least to me, I think very simply. I like it's just simple, like love. A society that is led truly by love and honor and integrity. And if we can't do that, we really have to ask ourselves what is going on. Like we really have to start having conversations about controlling ourselves and building a society that we genuinely feel safe in. And like attacking the problems and working on our problem solving skills, not avoiding it, actually working on it and facing the problem and facing your emotions too. Because that's also a hard thing to do, but it's not impossible. So a society that's just genuinely ran by genuine love and protection for one another, no matter what you look like. It's the content of your character.
That's great. I really think, when it comes to answering these kinds of questions and like imagining the future, I, really think with the Combahee River Collective, collective of radical, queer, Black women who said, like, if you free us, if you center our freedom, it would necessitate the freedom of everyone. It would necessitate the liberation of us all if you free, again, the most marginalized, at the intersections of disability justice, social justice, like racism, like at the intersections of these. If you free them, then we free ourselves, we free all of us. So I really think with that, and centering the needs of the most marginalized, the people closest to the pain, then you necessitate the freedom and liberation of us all. So that's kind of what I think when it comes to imagining what freedom can look like. Yeah, and imagining new worlds.
I think moving away from a patriarchal, capitalist, white supremacist society, I think addressing all of those things would
Yes.
make life easier for everyone, youth included. I think all of those systems are very hard to live under, and they're all building on top of each other. So it's not just one of them that's an issue, it's all of them that makes it very, very difficult. And so if we figured out how to address those things, I think a lot of the issues that we had would probably just disappear.
Yeah, and they're interlocking, right? Like they're not, like you can't just eliminate the patriarchy without addressing racism, without addressing transphobia, homophobia, settler colonialism, like all those isms are not separated, but they're interlocking and come together. So like Sojourner Truth said, like you have to take root and branch. Like it's not just the branches, you're not just taking off one ism, like you really have to get to the root of the issue, and that's like dismantling all of them and like the interlocking nature of them all.
I also think truly celebrating difference and difference of thought, difference of perspectives, and really creating space for difference and not being not leading with a scarcity mindset and a fear-based mindset. I think just thinking about money and energy and the energy we need to keep thriving, and that it's so much centered in money, and that if that was more equitably dispersed, and that collectively we could really rejuvenate. And so I just think about that a lot, and like who's holding so much energy and so much of people's ability to really rejuvenate and thrive, and like what does that mean to have that really shared in an equitable communal way. Like that would be really transformative.
And just piggyback off of that one more thing, I think like moving away from the model of extraction into a model of land stewardship, like quite literally for the earth. I think that's something that our Indigenous brothers and sisters and like people have been saying for a long time. And so when I think about Indigenous rights and land back, like I quite literally mean land back, like going back to the models of stewardship that isn't extracting from the earth in a manner that is quite literally heading towards our extinction. So I think when we think of like what that looks like, I am also thinking about like how we are taking care of the earth and ourselves, because they're like interconnected, like we depend on the earth. So I think quite literally like moving to a model where we are caring for the earth and it's not extracting, leading with love for ourselves, for other humans, but also other species and like the earth, like quite literally the land that we need to live live on. Is something else that I would just name.
Yeah, I feel like everything, well, at least to me, I feel like everything comes back to our minds and our bodies and our souls. So like when we don't align them and when we don't fill them with like positivity and inspiration, we really have to address that, and we really have to like really face ourselves. So like Kev said, so we can save ourselves and the planet.
Absolutely. I think that just goes to show, well, Tamara, did you want to say anything else before we finish that?
Being able to daydream is really important.
Yes.
Not just to have, nightmares, but to really have space to daydream and just envision. You say something and you're like, oh, you have people rallying around you like, okay, this is about doing something I've never heard of before, but let's let's make it happen. I think
Yeah.
that's.
I appreciate that. I think all of this just goes to show that we've really only scratched the surface of the depth of the thought that you all have put into your mission and this work, and the complexity, right? The complexity and the nuance of what it requires to get it right. So I really appreciate that. And I guess that is all just to say, for both our people in the audience and for the people watching this recording, please reach out. Please keep the conversation going. There's so much to learn here. I get the benefit of following up with these great folks after the fact to have that conversation, but I encourage you all to do so as well. And so then, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for having this conversation today, just full of wisdom and sound advice, particularly for people who do not get to work with young people that often or that closely. So thank you all again, and I wish you all the best, and I will see you all shortly. So
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the platform to come and speak on the
Marcus,
program. Yeah.
thank you all again.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.